Alright, and so here we are with round two, or sorry, the second video, round act 3, actually, of the Game of Thrones Winter Kid tournament I played at. So I'm on the left yet again playing Stark Martell, or Martell Stark, and my opponent is playing Baratheon Fealty. And this is a friend of mine. Actually, this is the person who I showed Baratheon Fealty, regretfully, and because now I have to play against it fairly often. And that being said, I actually don't mind my deck's chances against them. I don't think it's a deck I want to play against. More than not, I think that they do a lot of very powerful things, and they can close games out very quickly. But I actually think that a deck such as mine does have a good chance of blowing them out with a Varys, and then potentially setting up a lock, or having them just not have the economy to continue to play the very expensive characters like Robert Baratheon and Stannis Baratheon that are so powerful. So just shuffling up here, and just chit chatting. Like, this is a person I have played with before, and we did a little bit of testing together before this tournament. So everything's going well for both of us right now. We're both 2-0. This is round 3. And then our third friend is actually playing in the other 2-0 match right now. So we're all pretty happy with how things are going so far. I don't remember whether or not I mulligan this hand, but I don't believe I do, because the setup looks very good from what I can tell. So I'm holding on to a Varys, which I'm always happy to see very early. And I actually have I have options in setup here where I can either go for a Sansa duplicated with a Nymeria, or I can go for a duplicated Sansa alongside a Edric Dane and a Tumblestone Knight, I believe. And I'm just like checking my plots and just like deciding how I'd want to play this game out here, because one relevant factor is with Varys, I actually do need some amount of economy up to play him off of either your Calm Over Westeros or your summons. So there is an extra card involved, but I figure, between the 4 cards I'll be drawing now, and then the at least see another 4 cards I'll see in the next few turns, I should be able to find some sort of economy. So I do make a 4-card setup in the end, and I do end up keeping the I do end up going for the Sansa with the Tumblestone Knight and Edric. And this game did kind of influence where I think I want to be going with this deck in the future. So we'll see. I do actually hit the second Edric Dane, which is pretty awesome. I get to keep a copy of him through a Varys here. Or at least that's the hope, considering I do have the Varys in hand already. We're ready to go on that. So I think we're just deciding our plots. My opponent also is looking at a pretty awesome start here. You can see he's got 2 Roberts and a second Dragonstone Keep. So he's just like looking at really coming out the gates quickly here. So I'm just kind of I'm really agonizing right now between summons and Calm Over Westeros. Because I actually just want to keep my hand as is. My hand is great. Summons lets me set up a little bit better, and I might be able to get away with just finding a Rose Road instead of a King's Road, because I'll have the 5th gold from the Calm Over Westeros the next turn. But in the end, after a lot of going back and forth, I do go with the summons, and my opponent opens up with a Calm Over Westeros. So he chooses to go first, or he chooses to allow me to go first. So I make him name his choice of claim before I choose my character. He does go with the often named military, and I get to see 10 cards pretty quick here. So unfortunately, this is not a very exciting pile. I kind of agonize over it for a little while. And I believe I'm choosing between a Bastard Daughter to help me set up the Varys turn by eating away at my opponent's hand. Maester Kaleote or a Dornish Paramour. And I believe after a lot of agonizing, I do go with the Dornish Paramour. It simply is the highest strength intrigue character here, and I do want to try and win some intrigue challenges. I almost went for the second copy of Nymeria. It was actually surprisingly close, but or it was also another decision. I do end up opting for the character because I don't want to play the Nymeria before the Varys regardless, and I do think that once the Varys triggers, I should be able to win basically all of my military challenges after that point. So I don't need a second copy. And I do find a King's Road off the top there, which was pretty excellent. And I'm sitting here looking at a pretty big hand, and I'm like ready to go. I take my 4 gold for the turn, and I decide between playing either the Rose Road now or hold on to that for later, or the Blood Orange Grove. And I end up going for the Blood Orange Grove right away, and I believe I end up just playing a pair of characters here, the Dornish Paramour, and I believe either a Greenblood Trader or a Bastard Daughter, like one of the two here. And I end up opting for the Bastard Daughter because I think it plays the best before Varys, and then which I'm preparing to set up here, and it is really powerful, and it's gives me a good chance to get my setup. So I'm actually looking at this hand, and I realize, I think I'm down to exactly 7 here. But if I'm down to only 6, I should probably have held on to the Edric Dane at least for another turn, because ultimately I do have some power cards in hand and I'd rather have going into next turn than the second copy of Edric Dane. Anyway, my opponent is hanging on to a few cards here, gets the Robert with the duplicate, and is kind of holding on to a gold here and figuring out what to do. And they end up opting for the consolidation of power and just tapping down the Dornish Paramour because he didn't want to have to block with the Melisandre this turn. That was the big key there. And he ends up putting the power on the Edric, which was fine. And so I do serve with the Sansa regardless, because the Sansa will either get through unopposed or it'll force the Melisandre down, both of which are acceptable outcomes for me. And I am just trying to pare down my opponent's hand before I play a Varys next turn right now. So we end up hitting just another economy location. Opponent has 4 cards in hand still, so they're actually quite on the lower side already. And I contemplate throwing in the Bastard Daughter for a quick military challenge, and I ended up opting not to, which was definitely a mistake, because of Robert Baratheon's Intimidate. I definitely had forgotten at the time that the second character was going to get knelt regardless, so I might as well get my 1 unopposed power, despite the fact that I will not be getting the military claim. So the Bastard Daughter dies, takes away a Littlefinger, and I'm feeling pretty great at this point. My opponent has 3 cards in hand. Sure, they have a duped Robert Baratheon in play, but I do have the March to the Wall in my plot deck exactly for that reason. So, we shuffle up our 6 cards, and then there goes the Varys. And now we're in trouble. That's like a big reason to have kept the Edric Dane, is just to lower the odds of getting that Varys taken out of my hand there. Now I think both of us missed something here. We pick it up before the next turn because maybe I'm a little bit distracted now. I have to come up with a new plan. But I didn't take a power from Sansa, and he forgot to stand his fiery follower in dominance. So we're both short of power right now, which we do fix before the turn is through. So I'm trying to figure out what I have to do now. I believe I immediately go for another summons because this is we need to dig that another copy of Varys out of the deck right away. But yeah, I certainly could have played that turn better. I could have had at least 7 or 8 cards to protect the Varys there. Especially considering I know it's coming next turn regardless. That's probably closer to what I should have been doing. So that was definitely a misplay on my part that ended up punishing me pretty hard. So I end up going for the Commodore Westeros. I actually misremembered that. I thought we went for the next summons right away. And I think maybe this is me thinking I can play the fair game for a bit because I do have a Nymeria in my hand. And this lets me play the Nymeria and then play the King's Road. That way it can't also get stolen from my hand. And that way I just need to find a Varys and I have the King's Road in play to play it immediately. Alternatively, I do have a few other cards kicking around. Like I see a Confiscation and a Green Blood Trader. But I believe I just go for the Nymeria here. And my opponent leaves to quickly check because that first player chooses the effect of plot, chooses the order of plot, red, and revealed effects. I guess he had forgotten that. I can't, not that I blame him. I've definitely made a lot of rules mistakes. I did make a rules mistake in this tournament that was fairly impactful in the last round. That being, it ended up not that it probably wouldn't have influenced the outcome of that game, but it was definitely good to learn. So my opponent's kind of sitting there deciding what to take from his summons. And he ends up going for a Stannis, which is very good against my deck and this board in particular, where I am definitely playing a very large number of cheaper characters in order to try and take advantage of resetting the board. Yeah, so that definitely that first turn and not being more protective of my Varys plan, it definitely did backfire, and it's time to find a plan B. I ended up finding a second copy of Nymeria here, regardless, despite the fact I hadn't taken one on the summons. So now I'm like, this Nymeria is actually very well protected. Basically, because I do have a confiscation for a potential milk of the poppy, and regardless, it is still ready to go. So I think I'm agonizing here between limited locations, and I do believe in the and I choose to put the King's Road into play, which does prevent me from using Edric Dane this turn. That's the one downside. And like the economy is somewhat tight, so I could have played the second copy of Blood Orange Grove instead and kept a gold open for Edric, but I felt that having the King's Road essentially in a safe place for myself if I can hit Varys in the next few turns was a pretty big deal, because my next 2 plots are now pretty much guaranteed to be a summons, and then if I don't hit off of a summons, I'm going for a Counting Coppers, because I do need to find a way to deal with it with Robert and his other large characters. I'm almost certainly not going to be able to play the fair game and just win challenges to get these characters off the board. And my post just confirming that Intimidate is purely an offensive ability, which we kind of knew. And this is where things get a little bit unfortunate, is because he busts out a Lightbringer, which is pretty brutal on this board. Because this Robert is going to be winning a ton of challenges, and I'm now forced to always steal one of his icons just to prevent him from coming in twice, really. And the Melisandre does tap something here as well. He kind of announced the trigger. He's like, I'm reloring something. Or, oh no, I think we were talking about the Vanguard Lancer. I apologize. Yeah, I think he didn't tap something immediately with the Melisandre, but we fix it quickly afterwards. Because like I said, this is a guy I play against a lot, so we sometimes have shortcutted things like with each other that I would do less often for other people. Oh, you know what? Maybe he's not thinking about Rolor right now because he does play a Scene in Flames. And we're talking about the ordering of effects, finishing this off or immediately kneeling. And I believe that the actual effect the card happens first and the effect happens first and then the reaction happens to the effect. If that's incorrect, that'd be a good thing to know in comments. But that is my understanding as of right now. And so he sees my confiscation, takes it. It's just kind of another unfortunate miss there for me. I think he keeps being afraid of the Edric Dane here. I let him go back on it because he initially taps this Edric Dane. And then I'm like, oh, I didn't have any gold for this anyway, so I don't mind. But I think he catches it quickly enough that I'm like, that I let it slide. Because, yeah, it's like this Edric Dane isn't coming in for challenges this turn. And I think he realizes, we were talking about this later, that the Dornish Paramour can only force blocks can only force legal blocks. So I think we were talking about this after the game, but he's very worried about this Dornish Paramour pulling in the Robert Baratheon when in fact it really just couldn't do that. And this is where I start to really have trouble in attacks. I think basically the Sansa comes in every turn, and then everything else is not looking too great. Oh, but I do get to make the Nymeria attack first, stealing Robert's military icon. Because in order for him to win this, he needs to send it. His entire team has to block, which means I'm not losing a military challenge this turn, which I am perfectly happy with. And then if he chooses not to put his entire team to block, then I haven't really overcommitted either. So he ends up just accepting the loss, which is great for me. And then I throw in a Sansa for intrigue afterwards. Mostly just to tap her. Hopefully I can get his Melisandre out of the way. If not, then I get to peel a card out of his hand, both of which are completely fine for me. This is where I pass challenges, and it's just so that basically this Tumblestone Knight can oppose the power challenge coming in from Robert. That being said, my opponent is still basically winning all three challenges, and that's never a good spot to be. And this Lightbringer is going to do a lot of work in that it's just going to win dominance for him every turn, and it does force me to prevent him from, or it just does force me to steal one of Robert's icons every turn. And it seems like I end up opposing, because the Tumblestone Knight was really only ever going to oppose one challenge, so it was fine that it saved me from the military. And then he just comes in and intimidates the Edric just to really completely kneel out my board, and then hits the green blood, which is probably the best of the three options in my hand again. At this point, I'm basically looking for the Varus, like I was talking about, or some multiples copies of Tears of Bliss. Because although I haven't been able to win an intrigue challenge thus far, I should be able to start winning them now. And admittedly, if I had a Tears of Bliss, I would focus more on it because I do have the Nymeria to give me that ability. So this is where I certainly realize, I do have to find a Varus this game. We're not going to win unless there's a Varus, unless a Varus comes down. And unfortunately, this is Baratheon Fealty, so I do start to really have my ability to make challenges hampered here as outcomes of filthy accusations. And he chooses yet again, I believe, to go second, giving me a chance to figure out who I want to make challenge, giving me the chance to find out what he is tapping before I choose my summons target. And unfortunately, yet again, I don't really hit. I don't have a Varus hiding in there. So I'm instead end up opting for an Arya Stark, I believe. Because that way I could try and force him at least some awkward blocks by intimidating through his more powerful military characters. And then the other option is Maester Kaleote, with the hopes of losing a challenge with him and then stealing the other icon, effectively nullifying Robert. But they end up deciding that ultimately it's not a winning strategy. Yeah, so as you can see, I'm just kind of in a rough shape regardless. So certainly not feeling great about my chances at this point, but there are ways for us to get back into this. Especially considering my board is more or less perfectly duped for a Varus situation. I know I have a dupe on everything, and I'm being fairly protective of them. I am getting rid of other characters because I don't feel that my board is well suited to winning the fair game, especially considering I know that he has that Stannis in hand. I do feel like Varus is my best option, or is simply the only way I'm going to win this game. I can't just sacrifice dupes and go wide against a Stannis. It does not work out very well for you. But I am able to play the Maester. I did forget another reason to choose the Maester was the ability to play it so cheaply, because I do have the two reducers, and then I do throw out the Bran as well. I don't just on the off chance I see an event that might have actually been a mistake, because now in my hand are just a confinement and a Indoran's name, and Indoran's name is actually a necessity for me to win or to hit, because if I hit a Varus off of 5 cards through county coppers and drawing, I actually only have the ability to make 5 gold for characters right now, because I do have that Kingsword in play. So I actually do need the Indoran's name. So there's actually a possibility that I should have kept both of these characters in hand. Like that might have been a mistake. In fact, probably was, because I'm just in a position where I really do need to sweep the board here. And then, although I believe after the end of the next turn, it is simply going to be too late, because I will be losing during the turn that I play Varus. So we'll see how it goes. I'm trying to recall how this game went after this point. So there goes the Stannis, and I know that now my challenges are very, very awkward. I think I still have to throw in the Maester. That's just me trying to bait a block that isn't necessarily very good. And I think actually I sent it in for intrigue, which was the real mistake. I should have sent this in for power. I think that does force my opponent to block, and that's how I can actually. Uh, that would be the way I could keep the Robert off the table. But by sending it in for intrigue, my opponent can just give up a card, which isn't particularly important in this board. And I end up stealing a power icon here with Nymeria, and I'm just trying to from Robert with Nymeria because I'm just trying to avoid giving him renown on defense. But I am not in a. I think the correct play was actually to remove the power from Robert prior, and then send in with the Maester Kaleo for power, and then potentially send in the Sansa for intrigue later. I think that was definitely misordered because I don't think he wants to lose a power challenge here, just because that is how he is closing this game out right now. And if I simply lose that challenge and really defend his hamper his ability to get through that's how I can get through this game. That being said, he actually ends up letting both challenges go unopposed, which is pretty rough for me. I just was trying to get at least one block out of those, because again, I'm just not in a great spot. Perhaps I'm also playing poorly against Baratheon. It's not. I'm giving them perhaps extending too far in my challenges and giving him too many opportunities to kneel my characters, but I feel somewhat obliged to make a couple challenges just to try and get through to try and inhibit my opponent's power. So unfortunately, Robert is pretty much never losing a challenge in this game. There are simply too many Nelt characters on the board, and the Intimidate is just going to be very powerful. So the Dornish Paramour ends up biting the dust here, and we're just trying to oppose as many challenges as possible, but are not doing particularly well. So there goes the Indorans name, which I probably should have held on to the two characters to protect. But I'm not. I don't believe that I'm playing this matchup particularly well at this point. So I end up opposing all of his challenges at the most of his challenges at the very least. But unfortunately now I can only stand two characters, and that's really the killer here. Is the Stannis is real powerful here. So I'm just trying to give myself the best chance to oppose challenges for any impact with the Sansa. And I believe I flipped the counting coppers here, but it's really a moment of too little too late. We've fallen too far behind already. So interestingly, I think the biggest lesson I talked about a little bit in the other video was I should be filming at less of a high angle because there's a lot of glare going on. And I think I'm about to scoop here basically. He is going for a cistern and he filthy accusations, so I just have the one standing character here. And he is already at, I believe, 13 or 12 or 13 power, especially once you add with the Robert, and I believe that's about 8 or somewhere between 8 and 10 power on his house card. It's harder for me to tell and remember, and he's kind of talking about how this is the turn for him to win, so he's kind of playing out all of his characters, and I'm trying to just get as many standing characters as I can going into the challenges phase. And I end up drawing a pair of Tears of Bliss here, but unfortunately, like it's just far too little, too late. So I think we basically go to challenges. He swings in with Robert once, and then I more or less concede because I can, although I can prevent Robert from entering a pair of challenges with that Lightbringer, I can't prevent him from from just intimidating through once, and that's just enough. And I think I threw the Bastard Daughter into the wrong pile there, but I think we're also. I think the handshake is merely seconds away. Yeah, so that original hit on Varus was pretty bad. I think I could have played better around that situation, given myself better odds, and perhaps just not extended my hand so far as I did at that point in time in the game. But that being said, it was a very good game. This is my opponent does end up going undefeated and winning the game night kit here, so I can't complain too much.